This morning's guest wanted to start for Joe Paterno. He even wanted to start for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He didn't make it. Now he's starting for the March of Dimes. Who is he? You'll meet him coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the community room at South Carolina Bank and Trust in Murrells Inlet. We're focused on the March of Dimes ambassador families, and we're visiting with Professor Mark Mitchell, a professor at Coastal Carolina University and a board member for the PD division of the March of Dimes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Professor Mitchell,
Good
thanks
morning.
so much for coming in. Do you mind if we call you Mark?
Please call me Mark.
You were about to say, please call me Mark.
Please call me
That's
Mark,
right.
and it is my pleasure to be
Although
with you
you
this
go
morning.
by Professor Mitchell almost every other morning.
Occupational hazard, let's call it. But
that's right,
folks
that's
know
right.
me best know it's simple old Mark.
Simple old Mark. Now, your kids don't call you Mark. They're your dad.
Sometimes they do, being silly. They'll
that
decide
right?
that we're going to be on a first name basis, and we try to nip that real quick.
I bet you do. I bet you do. That's right. I bet you do. And on a Monday morning, are you heading from here to school? Or
Absolutely.
You're teaching.
We are. I have a dual role. I'm a professor of marketing, so I have my own classes that I handle.
Right.
But then I have the privilege of serving as the chair of my department. So there are 20 colleagues that I work to support.
Wow.
So on one hand, I do my own work, and my own work is a demonstration project, and it keeps me engaged serving my students.
Right.
But then an equal amount of my time is how can I find ways to help my colleagues do their job the best that they can.
And you all have recently kicked off a business school out at Coastal.
We are a strong Wall College of Business.
Right.
With a recent hire of a number of things that occur. Great leadership from Dave DeCenzo.
Yeah.
Recently coming through the presidential search process, named as our president, was our former dean before he became our provost.
That's right.
And a national search yielded a gentleman by the name of Henry Lowenstein. He'll be coming to us from Cal State Bakersfield.
From
Well, he'll
Bakersfield, I
assume
saw that.
our deanship. And I will tell you that in the search process, our faculty just fell in love with him. We're very excited about him, found him very engaging. He's been very successful in his past, and we look forward anxiously to him coming on board to help us
So
continue to do well.
he'll be the new dean of
He'll be the new dean of the Wall College of Business, yeah.
following in Dave DeCenzo's shoes.
Yes.
And
And
so
it's-
you all have had a little hiatus when he took on the provost slot.
But, we have caretakers, and we're very fortunate for that. Dave DeCenzo decided that in my absence, as I go to the provost, we want to make sure that we do things well. And that, from a dean standpoint, is we have internal operations, keep the trains running on time.
Right,
And you've
right.
got constituents. You've got friends of the university, friends of the college
Right.
who help and support us. So Dave wanted to make sure that those two areas were well served. Sam Wathen is our interim dean for operations, fantastic associate dean, who, with my help, we help keep the trains running on time. Then retired executive Harold Stowe, who serves on our board of visitors. Harold serves as the interim dean for development. So Harold's role is to keep those external relationships going, those fundraising opportunities, keep that work alive while we anticipate new leadership. So it was a very innovative plan. I think it's worked very
I
well.
don't think I knew that Harold was doing that. I saw a picture
Yeah.
of Harold on the front of the Herald this week with a check presentation. He also chairs the Myrtle Beach Air Base
Absolutely.
Redevelopment Authority.
Absolutely.
And they were accepting a $3.5 million check from Buddy Stires for the Robert Spear
Yep.
Center out there at
That's
the
right.
former Air Force Base. It's fascinating. I don't think I knew he held that role with you all. as
He
well.
knows the folks. He knows
Yeah.
the opportunities. He is so well committed, having worked for the Wall family, committed to the College of Business, committed to Coastal, and we're pleased to have him.
Absolutely,
Very much so.
Mark. How long have you been here in the area?
I've been along the Grand Strand here at Coastal for about 18 months. Started
Okay.
here in fall of '05.
Great.
I came here after 11 years up in the upstate at the University of South Carolina. What used to be USC Spartanburg became USC Upstate.
USC Upstate. Now, does that take in more than Spartanburg now? For
Yes,
Springville
and always
or
did.
Right.
The interesting thing was, from an operational standpoint, we always served the area, Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson.
Sure.
But you had a name, USC Spartanburg, that maybe didn't capture the total work of the university.
Right,
So the
right.
decision was to not so much reposition the university as much
Sure.
as to make sure that the name captured
Everyone understood.
the operation. So we became USC Upstate.
That's great. That's a tremendous area. Of course, it impacts a lot of folks, and obviously was the marketing department as pretty substantial there.
It's a little smaller
This is-
institution there.
Right,
And my role wasn't as much as in a leadership role serving my colleagues as much as it was, my role was teaching my classes and then heading up something we called the Center for Economic and Community Development. So it was my role to find those partner opportunities, the organizations that we could serve. And, I've been heavily involved in nonprofit work, and that really is an outgrowth of not just my own interest personally, but professionally. We've always been able to find ways to serve a church mission, Habitat for Humanity, or American Red Cross,
Right.
to try to do some research work for those folks. Oftentimes they have a whole slew of problems,
Right,
but they
yeah.
lack the resources to be able to address them. So what if we can help bring the resources to your problem and provide a great service? And as a state institution, that's a part of our responsibility,
Very
is to
definitely.
service our region.
Are you a Palmetto State native?
I'm not. I'm a native of a little farming town in Pennsylvania. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh in a time when the Steelers are winning Super Bowls, the Pirates are winning World Series, and I assumed every kid grows up when their sports teams are winning. They're
Right,
champions.
winning everything.
That's all
Yeah.
I ever knew.
That's right.
That's all I ever knew.
That's Franco Harris, Lynn Swann,
Absolutely.
names
Those
like
were
that.
those were my boyhood idols.
That's tremendous.
In fact,
yeah.
our athletic director at Coastal,
Moves,
Warren Kogel,
Right.
will tell you he played for Joe Paterno at Penn State.
No.
His college roommate, if I recall, is Jack Ham, who was a linebacker for the Steelers. As a kid, that was the linebacker I wanted to be. And playing for Coach Paterno, that was the guy that I wanted to play for.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a real big market for small, slow, undersized linebackers at Penn State, so I found myself going elsewhere.
That's hilarious. Yes. Did you stay in Pennsylvania for school?
I did. I went to Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania.
Right.
I went to work in the food industry for a number of years and elected
Really?
to go back to Pennsylvania for master's school. And then eventually I'm a proud graduate of Mississippi State University, where I got my doctoral training.
Wow, down in Jackson. Is that
In Starkville.
Forgive me.
In,
That's
in
right. I was
small
thinking-
town Starkville, Mississippi.
There is a school there in Jackson.
There is Jackson State University.
Okay, forgive me.
Yeah.
A good connection there. Now, when someone thinks about being a professor of is that something you thought about for a long time? Of course, having been in the food industry, you
I
probably-
never appreciated it as much as what I saw every day at home was my dad. My dad was a math professor.
Is that right?
Now, I went to school for business, and I started to work in sales. And then I found myself as a traveling person.
Right.
I'd go to the airport on Monday, come home on Friday. It's tough to do anything else.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I think I'll go back to school, and I went back and got my master's degree.
Right.
And then I'm deciding, do I want to go back to my company, or maybe I want to transition a little bit? And then I got to thinking, well, Pops always seemed to enjoy his work. He always seemed to be home at night. He always got great satisfaction out of what he did.
Right.
So I worked with my dean at the time to find a school where I thought I'd be a good fit, and Mississippi State turned out to be that school.
And that was your first teaching position?
Yes, as a graduate teaching assistant, going through my training. And then after graduation, I've been in South Carolina ever since. I worked at Francis Marion for a year. Then I was up at the Upstate for 11 years before now here to Coastal. And so, I've been in the Palmetto State since 1993.
So from the PD to the Upstate, back to
Down-
the Grand Strand,
absolutely.
kind of the PD.
Absolutely.
That's right. That's right. Of course, most of our viewers are in the PD in southeastern North Carolina.
Yeah.
A little less than a third are down here in Horry, but obviously much of what we do. And the Herald, the Myrtle Beach Herald, is now the sponsor of the show, and so surely the Herald's reach is principally this area, which is a great opportunity to get folks like yourself to come in, not only to talk about marketing and the Wall College, but also in opportunities like the Ambassador
Yes.
Families and the March of Dimes. A lot goes into the March of Dimes behind the scenes that folks don't think about.
I didn't know it. I must be totally candid with you. I'm a parent. We're going through a pregnancy. It turns out to be a high-risk pregnancy. My wife is put on bed rest at about 30 weeks, 29 and a half weeks. This is new to us. They tell us, well, your children might come early, but we're prepared for this. Well, okay, the hospital's prepared for this. As a parent, this is new to us. Holy mackerel.
Right.
So our children were born. They are healthy. After 50 days in intensive care, they come home. And not within about maybe a month or so, someone contacted us from the March of Dimes, and they said, we'd like to ask you if you'd like to participate in a program. Tell us about it. Well, you've just been through an intensive care experience in a neonatal intensive care unit. Did you know that the March of Dimes is heavily involved in both the founding and then the sustaining funding of neonatal intensive care, or NICUs? I did not.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of the March of Dimes from polio.
Right, sure.
I knew of the March of Dimes as working for birth defects or to make
Sure.
birth defects less likely. I knew as my wife, well, I'm to take folic acid during a period of childbearing years that makes certain birth defects less likely as a result of March of Dimes research. So I knew that. I had no idea really their tie into neonatal intensive care units. So you go through an experience where after 50 days, you know, in 50 days you go through the NICU, as we have a NICU up in Florence.
Right, sure.
You go through that experience, and now someone says, would you be willing to tell your story to help us build awareness, interest, appreciation for the March of Dimes? I don't know how you could say anything but yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so we've been involved ever since. We've been the formal ambassador family for a few years up in the upstate, and then we've always had a family team since that time. And then this year I was asked to serve on the board, to join the board service with our
Yes.
chair, Franklin Long, to serve on the board of the March of Dimes here by Ms. Joe Fisher. I welcome that chance to do so. I happen to work at Coastal Carolina. We're transitioning Walk America from the pavilion
That's
onto
right.
our campus.
Big move, big move.
Coach David Bennett, our honorary walk chairperson. It's one of those things where I guess in my mind, if you're looking, do you need any hint or any proof that there's some sort of master plan at work? This is one of those
That
times.
would be it. That's hilarious. That would be it. And that surely would be. When you think about, of course, you mentioned 20 peers in the department,
Yes.
folks you're supporting as
Yes.
chair of the department. You're pretty active already beginning to recruit them, I'm sure.
We have been working as a campus. You know, I found I'm a visual person.
Right.
So one of the things I did recently was I just took some of the images we had from my kids when they were born
Oh, yeah.
and the images of today. And, you know, if I took a sheet of paper that's 8.5 by 11 inches,
Right.
my children were about 12 inches long when they were born. So when folks see those images, it really grabs your heart. You may see a billboard out and about town where there's a hand outstretched
That's right.
and that baby in there. Again, that baby is less than the length of a sheet of paper.
Right, right. right.
You go to the grocery store today and you buy a bag of apples. It's a 3-pound bag of apples. My children weighed 2.5 pounds and 2 pounds 14 ounces when they were born. So they weighed less than that bag of apples you're going to buy at the grocery store. So I've been trying to use lots of visual images
That's a great,
across
powerful-
campus that people they appreciate the work of the March of Dimes. They see a success story, and my children are 6 years old and healthy and vital, 2 of my 3 kids. And we're slowly going through that process then. We're building new teams amongst student organizations, amongst different colleagues around campus,
That's
and we'll have a
tremendous.
team within the Wall College of Business as well.
You will have some dramatic excitement by the time April, it's mid-April, end of
Absolutely.
April, is it April 28th?
April 28th, that
Yeah.
final Saturday
Right,
in
which is
in
the
April.
National Walk America Day, a
Absolutely.
tremendous day to do. And all
Absolutely.
the schools in Horry County, I'm sure you followed as a new board member, Mark, I believe in the state. 2 of the
Absolutely.
top 2 schools in the state came out of
Forest Brook
Horry
Elementary, just incredible. My kids happen to go to St. James Elementary,
Right.
long time with the team. As I would making some phone calls on behalf of Ms. Fisher and the March of Dimes, say, well, we'd like to talk to you about, we know your school has had a team.
Yeah.
We'd like to talk to you about that. One of the interesting things I find is, we have ambassador kids who have been ambassadors in the past. We absolutely look forward to participating because, Walker, well, golly, a few years back, he was our ambassador, and he happens to be in our school.
Right, right.
And so it's exciting. I think at St. James Elementary, where my kids go, and Mary Beth Heath, who is our principal,
Yes.
they've been a long supporter of the March of Dimes. But I think she takes some great pride in the fact that those 2 little boys in her kindergarten
Right.
program,
Your 2 sons.
we've been supporting a good organization,
Yeah.
and now we see folks that have directly benefited from that
Absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely. You said y'all spent 50 days. Is that right?
50 days in neonatal intensive care. Yeah.
That's a tremendous amount
Yes.
of time. Give viewers this actually real quick, Mark, before if viewers needed to head out to work or off to school right now. The March of Dimes, a phone number if you wanted to learn more about the March of Dimes. That's
It's shame on me.
488-3463. 488-3463. Forgive me. Of course, marchofdimes.com.
marchofdimes.com, yes.
marchofdimes.com, NassarSano.com. If folks wanted to go on to the Spanish site, there's a real opportunity there. But that 488-DIME, and that's the only reason I remember it because Joe Fisher is so good on beating up that 488-DIME, which is a great opportunity. if a viewer wanted to learn more about the March of Dimes or find a way that their school, particularly if they're running out
Absolutely.
to school right now, how they could get involved. But share with viewers, give them a sense, if you wouldn't mind, for you, your first day or first week in the neonatal intensive care
Absolutely.
unit. Of course, for your wife, even bigger.
You
than
don't
anything.
you don't forget it. You don't forget it. You see young children hooked up to all these devices, and you have this large, to say bassinet, but this this bed, and then there's this little life there in the middle.
Mm.
And I remember one of the key days. I mean, for my kids, they're 50 days in intensive care, and they were born about 10 weeks early. They kind of go through a metamorphosis. They look like, in our case, I look back at the pictures, they almost look like wrinkled older men at birth. And their skin is so almost translucent because they weren't supposed to be here, but 10 weeks after.
Right.
So they go from being these older-looking gentlemen to these, really young-looking babies to then healthy kids around the time they're supposed to have arrived to come out. You see these premature preemie diapers, preemie diaper.
Oh, yeah.
It's about the size of a cocktail napkin, to put it into context. So the next time you're at one of our local bars, restaurants, and you have that little napkin on the plate, that's about the size of those preemie diapers that they use in the intensive care. I remember the one day I went into intensive care, and I thought, this is very odd to me. I look and I see what is an IV in my child's head. So what's
Yeah, wait.
tell me what's going on
before-
here.
Right.
And they said we had to find a vein. In essence, we have to move it around constantly. That was a place where we knew we could hit them that we haven't hit them previously.
Wow.
So the intensive care as well is a very quiet place. Recently the board of the March of Dimes had the chance to go up to Florence, and I was unable to make that trip, but I have a good understanding of what goes on in there.
Oh, yeah, sure.
One of the things they talk about is the quiet of the area. Quiet, because those babies really aren't crying at that age. It's a very serene kind of place. I remember some of the comfortable is not the word, but there's certainly a peace when, as a parent, you're going through that experience, and you're looking for a kind of a place where you can just kind of rest a little bit. So I would sit in the rocking chairs there between my kids, might read to them their children's Bible, and then every so often I just might doze off in the middle of the afternoon, and the nursing staff would know exactly what you're going through as a family, because it doesn't just affect the children, it certainly affects the family, and they just leave you be. They know that you've got a calm and a peaceful place. And I will say this, I'm thinking back on my own experience for the NICU. My boys came out healthy. 1 in 8 children in South Carolina is born early.
Right.
24 kids today in our state will be born early. 2 that I can think of, and maybe 3 if I investigated. In the time we were in the intensive care, my kids came out healthy and well. And I think I can think of 2, if not 3 kids that were unable to come out healthy and well. So I don't think you ever forget that.
Golly.
So a chance to give back a little bit and help the March of Dimes, it's the absolute least that I could do.
What can viewers do now if they haven't put a team together, if they're learning about Walk America for the first time? Of course, the Ambassador Baby is a critical role, and as you talked about on January 30th at the Hard Rock
Absolutely.
Cafe, Horry County Walk America kicked off. I know you were there as one of the board members. A lot of folks were out there to kick that off. They're putting teams together. How easy is it for someone to do a team?
It's simply as easy as giving me a message at the institution, my phone number and email. I'll share that with you. But it's a matter of contacting Joe Fisher, or it's a matter of going online to themarchofdimes.com and read some about what the March of Dimes does.
Right.
The ambassador family role is to give you that tangible thing.
Oh,
In my family, we do lots of company visits. We might bring the work group together around lunchtime or maybe at the end of a shift. Here's this family. Here are these kids. We want to just thank you for the work that you're doing as a company and as a team supporting the March of Dimes. As you go about your fundraising work, these are kids you're helping. These are kids you have helped. So it's meant to make it very tangible. So I know that I've already told Ms. Fisher, let me do visits. If there's a company, a group of folks that need to see something tangible, what does the March of Dimes do? Let us come to you. Let us come and help you tell that story. And that's a large role of the ambassador family. They're there at the event.
Right.
We take great pride in seeing the children. But right now they're engaged in doing different interviews and in print and broadcast to help tell that story But then you don't often see those company visits, those breakfast meetings with folks to let them know, well, here's the March of Dimes, and here's how we do things, and here's the good work that's occurring.
I love it. And some of the visual aspects you were talking about, if children can't be there with you, but if an adult goes in to talk about
Absolutely.
their role, if they're bringing a preemie diaper in, or bringing a cocktail napkin in, or a bag of apples,
it really
and
grabs
can say,
you.
if you've got children, you probably remember the 7 and 8 pound type talk. We're talking less than 3 pounds. Or for the ambassador babies this year, talking about a pound and 2 ounces, or a pound
absolutely.
and 4 ounces.
Imagine that.
You can't, can you? I mean, you can. Most adults you're talking to can.
But when it's one of the interesting things, when I first had contact with Coach David Bennett, and said, Coach, I'm here to support your efforts.
Right.
And you talk to him and say, well, one of his children was born early.
Right.
And one of his coaches had a child born early.
Right.
So the more you visit with folks, if you see a 10-year-old, you have no idea that they benefited in the past from the March of Dimes, that they were prematurely born, that the March of Dimes worked and helped people, and today they're healthy and vibrant kids. Mm-hmm. So it's often interesting. It's 1 in 8. So most of us in our social network, if you talk to some folks, you'll find out each of us has a friend, a family member, work colleague, what have you, who's been affected by prematurity and hopefully benefited from the work of the March of Dimes.
And prematurity surely doesn't discriminate. It goes in all races, all, as you say, all points in the pregnancy, as long as it's earlier than 37 weeks. Holly Hayes was with us a few weeks ago out at Redline Power Sports, the state director. I think you met her at one of the board meetings recently. It was fascinating hearing her talk about, as you say, your twin boys born at 30 weeks versus someone born at a normal or a pregnancy term there, but anything earlier than 37 weeks, and the impact, as you say, not only on families, but on society and on the workplace.
Oh, again, the bigger picture. I remember taking a good friend of mine into the intensive care. He was my dean in the upstate, Bill Word. I took Bill into the intensive care just to see it. A good friend. I'd like to share this with you, Bill. You can see what these folks do daily. How did I know that now 6 years later, Bill is a grandparent? His second grandchild was born at 26 weeks. His grandchild was born weighing less than 1.5 pounds. And his grandchild now today is a healthy 5-month-old baby, but still fear of some of those lingering problems. When you arrive that early, you keep seeing success, but you always have that wonder, is there something hearing related, something development related, something speech related that's just not showing up yet. So you just never know. That's why we're very pleased. My boys are healthy, normal, functioning kids in kindergarten. And that was really the goal we had. With speech therapy and whatever it was, you just never know what the longer term impact is from prematurity. And we just wanted to know that when they hit kindergarten, they'll be normal, healthy, curious, vivacious boys, and that's exactly what we have.
Since it's 1 in 8, and that is a tremendous number, there's still the 7 children that are born a normal term. Things come out okay. You use those words, you never know. And you think back even prior to your daughter's birth, a normal pregnancy.
Absolutely.
And when you're talking to a parent who doesn't know if their child's going to come out early, come out premature or not, what's the most important point you really want to push to a parent or any adult watching, whether it's a grandparent or a loved one, just to make sure, what would that be?
I'd probably say, but there but the grace of God. We don't know who's gonna be affected, but we know your family and friends are affected. We know that 1 in 8 of us are affected. So it may not be you that's affected. Maybe it could be you in a future pregnancy. Maybe it's going to be your grandchild, as it turned out to be my dear friend. The March of Dimes exists to help babies, to help sick babies, and to help their families. And it may not have affected you directly, but it may in the future. I hope it doesn't. But you have the chance to help other families, other parents, and they desperately need your help.
Those are great words, Mark. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Stay tuned to Professor Mark Mitchell coming up next. Been visiting this morning with a business professor. Think about that, a professor of marketing. He's probably pretty good with numbers. Of course, we got a couple of good numbers to get out. He shared with one off camera. He meant to give it earlier on, the 349-2392. 349-2392. He wants you to call. I say he's pretty good with numbers because think about it. We're about 70 days away. 70 days away. The date's coming up close, April 28th, about 70 days away. If you did what they were doing back in President Roosevelt's time and just got a dime a day, you'd be able to get $7 between now and the time of the walk. If you took the time to think, be a little aggressive, maybe I can get $1 a day, $70. Think about the impact that could have. You don't know. Another good phone number, simple, 488-3463. That's 488-DIME. If you don't want to be a part of the Coastal Carolina team, you can also just set up your own team. You can make a $70 or a $700. Be aggressive. Think $10 a day. Call on a couple of friends. Call on a couple of loved ones. You heard Mark say it. You just don't know. By the grace of God, you don't know if you'll be impacted directly, but someone you know will be. Take the time to pick up the phone or go online. He talked about marchofdimes.com. You can call the 349-2392 number or the 488-3463 number. Whatever you do, make the call. Get involved. Get out there April 28th. 9 a.m. registration. The walk's at 10. It'll be a beautiful day. Whether it's rain or shine, it'll be a beautiful day because the fight to save babies is a common one for a lot of folks. The goal's the same. The day will be beautiful. Get out there. Make the call.